Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and I'm back with a quick video analysis. I'll try and keep this one quick, I don't have a lot of time. I want to preface this simply by saying, when is the best time to attack? In particular, the king. When is a good time to attack? And we generally know the answers, right? If we're ahead in development, we want to attack. If we've castled and our opponent is still in the center, that's a good time to attack. If there's a lot of open lines, we want to attack. We generally know this. In some ways it's intuitive, in some ways it's been passed down. We also know, in general, how to attack, right? We want to aim our pieces at the king. We want to have open lines. We want to have more attackers than defenders. We know this. If we have all those ingredients are there, we've got a ready-made recipe for an attack. And what's interesting about this game that I'm going to share, I just played it, I just finished, Saturday morning? Sunday when I recorded this. That's basically my entire thought process. I shared a game earlier where I went deep into calculation. This game isn't so much that. It's simply noticing when is it time to attack, how to attack, and everything just, it flows from there. So I was white. I was playing a friend of the blog, Ral. This is, I believe, our third game. And what's interesting is that Ral had all of these moves pre-moved up till here, Queen H4, the Steinitz variation. I must say, it's kind of rough when you're the first world champion and you have this crappy variation named after you. Anyway, we can see what's happening here. Is that with his last move, he's pinned my knight, and that means he's attacking the e-pawn. And if we look at this, it's not easy to find a good defense. How do you defend the e-pawn? F3 is impossible, bishop d3 loses the knight, you can't really break the pin, he'll just take and then take on e4. There's no convenient way to protect the pawn. But then at the same time, if we remember opening principles, we know that moving the queen out early on isn't the best use of our time. In fact, usually you'll gain time attacking the queen. We also know that the purpose of the opening isn't to try and win a pawn, aha! The purpose of the opening is to get all of our pieces into the game. And so as such, I was able to simply play a gambit. Bishop e2, this is the main line. He takes, and then the important move. Knight b to d5, taking advantage of the fact that the queen is moved early. And then you'll notice that, of course, the threat is to take on c7. And there's no real easy way to defend that. For instance, bishop a5, we can just take it regardless, because the bishop needs to pin the knight, otherwise you lose the queen. So that's not very good. Other moves, like queen e5, we just get hit by f4, and again, we're going to win on c7. And so the only move, in this position, is to play king d8. I, of course, castle, and we've reached the real starting position of the Steinitz variation. And we can see here that white's going to have long-term compensation for the pawn. The black can never castle, his king is terrible. It's going to be a target for the rest of the game. Even in some endgames in this variation, white's activity is so strong, and black, because he can't castle, it's really hard to get this rook in the game, it can be hard to get this rook in the game. Even endgames, a pawn down, are often very good for white. Also, the queen is in the middle, and the queen doesn't have a lot of safe squares. And so we can easily imagine bishop d3 or bishop f3, rook e1 is coming. It's being attacked right now, so black needs to do something. And white's going to gain a lot of time, and all you have to do is transition that into an attack. That's going to be the nature of this position. I'm down a pawn, let's put it to good use. For the record, this variation isn't very good. I don't think it's refuted, but it's darn close, and it's not something I'd recommend the black pieces. I know it's so tempting. Aha, it's an opening as black where you win a pawn. But, oh. So Ral, anyway, he plays queen g6. He moves the queen out of the way. The main line is, of course, bishop takes c3, b takes c3. And so, in addition, Yes, black is with the bishop pair, but now white's pawns are a bit worse. That said, now the bishop can come here, the rook has an open b file, and the c pawn can be useful as well. We'll actually see that in the main game, actually. But this is the main line. Raoul, again, he played queen g6. And so I need to think, well, how to attack. And because he didn't take on c3, this gives me an option. I'm going to jump in. Knight d5. I'm attacking the bishop. Of course, I'm doubly attacking c7. He's got one real logical move. Bishop a5. I just developed a tempo. Bishop f4, d6. So now all of my natural moves are done. I've got 3 pieces already into the attack. My queen is eyeing his king, but there's pawns in the way. In fact, when we look at this position, what we really need to realize is that, or what I realized, is that if these pawns, if my pawns, if his queenside pawns, they would just disappear, black probably loses instantly. His king is simply too exposed. The queen is here. We can move the rooks over to the files, pick a file, right? And he's just going to be toast. He has no cover. So I know, again, the 2 questions about attacking. When to attack. His king is in the center. I'm ahead in development. I have pieces aimed at his king. Well, it's probably time to attack. I'm also down a pawn, so if I do nothing, black will eventually consolidate. Now the question will be how to attack. Well, I've got almost all my minor pieces there. But, again, to be really effective, I would like to open some lines and get my queen and my rooks into the attack as well. Now, I spent some time analyzing, can I take, on c7 right away, sacrifice a piece? That's a possibility, but it's complicated. And a much easier plan is this, with c4. And again, all I want to do is open lines. I want to play c5, I'm going to exchange here, open lines, get the queen, get the rook in, and that'll probably be mate. As long as I keep queens on the board, I don't see how he can escape. That's what's going to happen here. He tries to stop it, but I just push through anyway. c5. And again, it's not, well, for one, I'm not sacrificing material after he takes, and then I cash in there, so I've won the pawn back. Still down 1 pawn. But even if that wasn't, opening lines makes perfect sense. So we can get the rook in here. Maybe there's a sacrifice on c5 coming up, because that would force the d file wide open. And again, as it is, we're cashing in here on c7. And I shouldn't be worried about material at this point. Because again, it's all about the attack. It doesn't matter how many extra pawns he has. What matters are the open lines facing his king. So as it is, I took on c7. He moved the rook out because it was, of course, attacked. And then after take, we reach this position, in which, well, black isn't even up a pawn anymore. So material is equal, but his king is still, of course, a long way away from safety. And this is why such openings are so dangerous, and why I highly do not recommend them as black. Now again, I learned this lesson the hard way myself. For many years, I was the guy who would try and win a pawn, hang on to it, I would accept gambits, with the idea that if I could just play perfectly, you'll win with the extra pawn in the endgame. And I can probably count on one hand the number of times that's actually ever happened. Especially when I was younger. And it's not worth it, given the choice. Having an extra pawn in a worse position, or being down a pawn, but with a better position. Here it's a much better position. I go with a position every time. And that's something I've learned as I've gotten better. But we can really see that here, is that, black is suffering for not even any material gain. So now, of course, there's a potential threat of moving the bishop, which would be a discovered attack on the king. And so he plays bishop d7, which makes as much sense as anything else. So now it's step 2 of my attack. I've opened lines, I'm not even down material, so that's great. All I need to do is, let's get my rooks in. Where should the rooks go? I decided to start with rook e1, because if he ever tries to escape with his king over to the relative safety of the king's side, Well, the rook will cut that off, or there's a nasty discovered check waiting for him. I could have played rook c1, I could have moved my queen, then brought a rook to the d file, I could have done all these things, right? But just very, very simple. He brings his knight out, well, queen d2. What's the idea? It's simple. I'm going to bring my rook over, and then I'm threatening to move the bishop, and that'll be mate on d7. And it's very hard to stop already. He plays knight f5, okay. I, of course, I move my bishop because it was attacked twice, so I move it back. He moves his king one step away, because, of course, if he doesn't, after rook d1, there's a pin. It's very difficult, if it's even possible, to defend this at all. And so he tries to move it out of the way. But now his king's on the open c-file. And so I just move my rook there. Do we see how easy this is? I mean, I was calculating. Some of these moves I was calculating quite deeply, but at the same time, I don't even need to calculate. This is perhaps the most natural move here. Rook to c1. He brings his rook over, and then I move my rook over. And now already there's it's hard to even find a good move for black here. For instance, if you were to move his bishop, bishop e6, discovered attack on my queen, I can end the game very nicely. I would simply sacrifice. After he takes, we have knight e6, discovered check. The rooks are cutting off absolutely everything. Knight c6, rook slides in, and that's checkmate. Kind of nice. Remember my last video? It's a video I lost. Someone sacrificed their queen against me. It was a beautiful checkmate. Here, I could have had a chance to return the favor. Raoul didn't play that, though. He ended up playing knight e7. So now at this point, all my pieces are there. I just got to figure out how to finish it off. And as a general rule, if you're attacking the king, if you can threaten a mate in one, it's probably a good thing. So after knight b5, so now the knight is pinned, and so there's one less thing in the way of my rook. Knight a7 is actually checkmate, because again, the knight is pinned. The king has nowhere to move to. He can't move this rook. You know, if he moves the rook somewhere, we simply cash in. That's mate. Trying to protect the pawn. This is what he did in the game. That allowed knight d6. He went king b8. Discover check. Mate. Which is kind of pretty. And if he were to instead go to c7, which is, again, I was really hoping he would do this for me. Knight f5. And again, if he goes back, it's the exact same thing. Knight e7 mate would be the exact same thing. However, he had the opportunity of moving out to king b6, which would then allow me to sacrifice my queen, which I really want to do, to come in with bishop c7. And it's just, look at this. The bishops and the rook teaming up to cage the king. And it's just, would have been fantastic. When we look at this, I went over this quite quickly. And there's a lot of extra lines that we could have looked at, and there's a lot of potential attacking ideas. There's a lot of them. But what I really want to highlight is that simply the very basic attacking strategies or ideas that I mentioned at the very beginning are what was behind this entire attack. That was it. We start here. I know it's time to attack. So how do I do it? I just want to open lines, point my pieces at him, and in particular get my rooks there. If I do that, things are going to be pretty good. And that was it. c4, c5, and then once the position was open, right? Okay, what can black do to defend? And at this point, he's already lost. As I was finishing this game off, I was wondering maybe this would be a good game to do one of my reverse engineering. Where can we find black's mistake? Or how can we improve black's play? And what's actually phenomenal, or maybe phenomenal's not the right word, amazing, is that again, black is dead lost here. The computer says it's like minus 14 for black. Like, he's so... There's nothing you can do. And the game goes on 10 more moves, right? In fact, black is still lost here. Still. And in fact, it's all the way back here. When he played Queen G6, that the computer says, is beyond black's reach. It's already minus 4 or minus 7. It's a ridiculous score. And and that kind of blew me away. I thought black, I mean, he could have held on to like a worse endgame, maybe. No, the computer thinks it's over. And why? And again, this shows why these positions, they're not recommended. It's not worth winning a pawn if you have to put your king on d8 and your queen's over here and white's got all open lines ready to attack. It's simply not worth it. Because if you make one inaccuracy, even a move order slip, you simply lose. And why would you put yourself through this? And so this is something that I want to hammer home, because this is a lesson, again, I learned very late in my chess development. Up to my 1800s, I was so in love with material. And I could calculate, and I could, play positionally to a certain point, but what was holding me back was my inability to let go of materialism. I've got a quick game to show you, actually. So if you look here, I was black in this game. This was played in 2002. I was approximately 1700 at the time. It was an online rating, so give or take. Look at this game. So just the context, the opening was the Black Mirror Dimer Gambit. I was black, and so at this point, I'm up a pawn, and I've defended very well. My opponent was several hundred points higher than me. I believe he was almost 2100 rated, and I had done a fantastic job up till now. Completely outplayed him in the Gambit. Now, he's probably feeling a little bit desperate, and so in the game, he played rook takes f6. So what's the idea of this move? The idea is that if I take with the queen, he's going to play knight d7, queen moves somewhere, wherever, take, he picks up the rook. At the same time, I'm still up a pawn. No materials actually changed hands. If anything, black is doing better because now pieces have been exchanged, and there's no attack at all to black king. But something funny happened. When he took, and then if I were to take with my queen, I'm up the exchange, but then after knight d7, he wins it back. And I wanted to hang on to that material. And you might be already thinking of what I've been doing now, is that I was so in love with material, I would rather be up, I already up a pawn, let's be up in exchange. So I played king takes f6. Oh my goodness. And then after queen h6, now my king can't come back to g7. And so white is now won a pawn, up the exchange, and my king is in huge trouble. Look, this pawn is pinned. White is now threatening knight takes g6, winning the exchange because of the pin. So I move my king back. Well, then all of a sudden bishop a4 pops in, so I got to move my king here. Instead of taking on g6, white continues the attack. And now he shows that he really is a 2100 rated player. And he simply wipes the floor with me in the end. And what happened here? I remember this clear as day. I remember this position. c5, I thought I was doing great. He took, right? Offered the exchange. If I take with the queen, material stays equal, and I'm still up a pawn. But I wanted more. I was so in love with material that I took with my king. So I was up material, and then I lost the game. So good job me, right? The very same thing happened in this game. So where is it? Or this is what I suspect happened with Ral here. And the reason people play this line as black is because they're going to be up a pawn. And people love being up a pawn. And in fact, it's interesting, if I looked at my database for other games in this line, and the vast majority are played sort of in the junior level. So under 18, under 16, often under 12. So it's kids basically playing this line because they win a pawn. And especially if you remember, if you learned chess as a kid, like, material is everything. If you can win a pawn, you're so happy. But it's a terrible position. Look at this. At what cost? And so, hopefully that this I hammer this home, because this is one of the most important lessons I ever learned, is that many cases it's simply not worth being up a pawn if your position is terrible. It's not worth it. Do something else. Because my moves were easy, and again, if you look at it in the computer, I did not play the computer's first choice on about half of this remaining game. And I had a couple of good moves, and some moves, were third or fourth choice, but the advantage was overwhelming, completely overwhelming. And I'm still winning easily because the white position is so much easier. And so, hopefully, this hammers it home enough. If you have the choice, be white, not black, in such positions. And then also the idea of opening lines for the attack. We reach this position. It's hard to see, how to continue the attack. And if you can see, let's trade the pawns. Even if you had to sacrifice a pawn. Well, it's not a sacrifice, and now we just have open lines, and things are amazing. And that's going to be it. Okay, so that's it for today. SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comments, all that. That'd be great. This is almost certainly my last video. Again, I'm moving, and so I gotta get back to packing, actually. And hopefully sometime beginning of June, I'll be back and I'll make videos and stuff. So when you see me completely offline for the next bit, again, I'm simply moving, and I'm moving. Moving's a lot of fun, right? So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.